Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in today. We've got a fresh story to share with you, so let's get started. My name's Damien and I'll tell you how one simple ultimatum ended my 4-year relationship when my fiancé stared me straight in the eyes and said, "It's them or me." She thought she knew exactly how I'd react. For years I always gave in, choosing peace over conflict. But this time I didn't fold, and my response completely shocked her. Before you make assumptions, let me walk you through the story so it all adds up. First met Liliana at a friend's casual weekend gathering. She walked in with a group of girls I hadn't seen before, all of them stunning, which instantly caught my attention. As the night went on, someone suggested playing games to break the By chance, Liliana and I got paired. We weren't the best team, but not the worst either. We won a few rounds, lost a couple, but what stood out was how easily we clicked. It felt natural, like we'd known each other longer than just hours. At the end of the night, I asked for her number and she gave it without pause. For the first few weeks we texted here and there. Nothing romantic at first, but somewhere along the way things shifted. One day we were just friends, and the next we were exploring something deeper. We spent more time together and soon we were officially dating, and it felt right. The chemistry was undeniable. That time I didn't realize that just because something begins smoothly doesn't mean the journey will be the same. Looking back, I see how my feelings blinded me. I put her on a pedestal and ignored the signs that didn't fit the perfect image. In my head, there were red flags early. She'd get upset if I disagreed with her or give me the silent treatment over small things. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just passionate. Strange how love can blind you to things that should make you question the bond. I kept excusing her behavior, calling it personality quirks. Over time, a pattern emerged. Liliana's love always had conditions, though she never said them loud. When I went along with her, she was warm and affectionate. But if I offered a different opinion, a switch flip, she'd go cold, distant, or act like I wasn't there. Other times she'd use sarcasm or guilt, making me second guess myself. I didn't see it then, but I was training myself to avoid conflict. Convinced myself peace was worth more than honesty. Slowly I stopped speaking up and just agreed to things that didn't sit right with me. I told myself that was compromise, but deep down I knew I was walking on eggshells. The more I gave in, the more control she had, control hidden behind love, kisses, and "I just want what's best for us." You don't notice it until you're deep in it, wondering when you stop being honest with yourself. On the outside, life looked good. We both had stable careers. She worked in healthcare administration and I was in corporate operations. But weekends were when I truly felt alive. Saturday mornings became my reset button. Co-hosted a podcast with 2 close friends. What started as a fun idea grew into something I looked forward to weekly. We weren't huge, but the show was growing. And more importantly, it gave me an outlet. Could create, laugh, speak freely, and connect. It was therapy without the cost. But Liliana never liked podcast. First, I didn't think much of it. She'd roll her eyes when I mentioned it or say she was too tired to listen. Sometimes she'd pretend to pay attention, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. I assumed it was just a different interest. No big deal, right? But then disinterest turned into something sharper. Whenever I brought up my co-hosts, her mood shifted. If I asked her to join us for group hangouts, she'd ask who was coming. And the moment she heard one of them was there, she'd back out with, "I'll sit this one out." Thought maybe it was just a clash of personalities. But then more patterns appeared. Every time I hung out with my friends, she'd go cold afterward. If I texted her while with them, her replies were short or non-existent. When I got home, she'd quiz me. So what did you guys talk about? Like she was checking if they said something she didn't want me to know. But if I skipped plans with them, she'd suddenly be all smiles and affectionate. It was like a switch. Eventually, I realized it wasn't about the podcast at all, it was about control. She saw my friends as a threat. They knew me before her. They challenged me, gave me perspective she couldn't control. Wanted me isolated, compliant, only hers. Took me a while to see it, but once everything clicked. The podcast, which had started as a fun side project, became the one part of my life she couldn't control, and that made it a problem for her. As it grew, we gained more listeners, a few shout-outs, and even some interest from sponsors. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly creative and alive. Naturally, I was excited. Shared every milestone with Liliana, coming home energized from recording sessions or celebrating new achievements. But instead of support, I got cold indifference. Stop pretending. Her words grew sharp. You talk more with your podcast friends than with me. Or, how many people even listen? And the one that cut the most. Do you really have to spend every Saturday with them? It felt like she was trying to take something I loved and reduce it to nothing. Her resentment was obvious, and that's when I began pulling away emotionally. I stopped sharing dates because her reactions drained the joy out of it. What was the point of talking to someone who only made me feel small for caring? That distance didn't fix things, it only turned every conversation into a minefield. Words had to be chosen carefully, every moment carried tension. One day, in the middle of yet another argument, she demanded I cut back on my podcast time, framing it as compromise. But I knew the truth. I didn't argue. Just looked her in the eye and said, "The podcast is the one thing that makes me feel alive outside of work. I'm not giving it up because you don't like who I'm around." Her expression said it all. Was used to me folding, but this time I didn't. From there, everything unraveled. We were engaged, wedding plans underway. Yet instead of bonding us, it magnified the cracks we'd been ignoring. Arguments became constant. Tiny choices turned into explosive fights. And then one day, in a heated exchange, she snapped, "Pick one. It's either me or them. Choose," she said. It with certainty, convinced I'd cave like always. Convinced I'd pick her. But I didn't. Calmly I told her, "I'm not abandoning the one thing that brings me joy just to keep the peace." That's when she pulled off the ring, told me I'd never see her again, and walked out. I didn't chase her. A week went by. No calls, no texts. Then she reached out, full of guilt. Her message was clear: my friends had turned me against her. She said I chose them over us, that I must have never truly loved her if I could end 4 years so easily. I just sat there stunned, not because I believed her, but because it proved how differently we saw things. I had betrayed her by setting boundaries. To me, I had finally stood up for myself. I didn't argue. Ended the call before saying something I'd regret. That moment pushed me into reflection. Began replaying all the times I brushed things off and saw how slowly love had turned into submission. Some people want a love that obeys. But I wanted a love that understands. Months later, she reached out again. She said she'd been working on herself, that she saw her mistakes, that she missed me. She claimed she had changed. I won't lie, hearing that shook me. I didn't run back, but I agreed. Talk. Gave it time. First things looked different. She listened more. For a moment I thought maybe we could rewrite our story. But slowly the same patterns returned. The guilt trips when I chose the podcast, the questions that looked like concern but felt like control. This time, I recognized it. I didn't wait for it to spiral again. I ended it quickly. Here's what I learned: sometimes you need the wrong kind of love twice before you finally get it right. Before you realize, love isn't meant to feel like a test. It should feel like freedom. And once you taste that peace, you can never go back to walking on eggshells and calling it romance. Looking back, I learned lessons I wish someone had told me sooner. First, never excuse emotional neglect just because you love someone. Love isn't meant to drain you or make you doubt your worth every time you speak up. Thought being a good partner meant avoiding conflict, but really I was shrinking myself to keep her comfortable. You lose your voice in your own relationship. That's not love. Second, watch patterns, not apologies. Anyone can say sorry. Anyone can promise change. But the truth shows up in what they do consistently. Was so focused on the idea of the love I wanted that I ignored the reality in front of me. An apology without change is just manipulation dressed as regret. Finally, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Don't cling to the fantasy in your head. She showed me repeatedly that she didn't want a partner. She wanted a follower. The moment I stepped outside that role, everything changed. If love feels like a prize you have to earn instead of a place you can rest, that's not love, it's control. Oh, let me ask you this. What would you have done in my shoes? If someone you'd spent 4 years with looked you in the eye and said, "It's me or the thing that keeps you alive," what would you choose? I'm not saying it's easy, but it's necessary. This story reminds you of something in your own life. Do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this right now. Because sometimes, all it takes is realizing you're not crazy, your feelings matter, and you deserve better to finally walk away. Thanks for listening.